I'm 23 years old, and in 6 months, on the night of my next birthday, I will become the bride of something that isn't human. Not because I want to, not because I chose this, but because 70 years ago, my grandfather, a starving 8-year-old boy in a forgotten village in rural Pakistan, was sold in a spiritual auction to save his family from famine. The contract was written in blood on parchment that never ages. And it says that every third generation, a firstborn daughter must honor the debt. I am that daughter. My name is Zara, and this is the story of how my family's desperate bargain with the unseen world has haunted us for decades, and how I discovered that some debts cannot be escaped, only understood. Why would a mother auction her own child to a jinn? What did my grandfather endure that he never spoke of until his deathbed? And what happens when you're chosen by something that has waited patiently for 70 years to claim what it was promised? This story will chill you to your core, but more importantly, it will teach you why we must never ever use spirituality as currency, no matter how desperate we become. Stay until the end, because what I learned about breaking generational curses might save someone you love. Before I continue, please make sure you're subscribed to this channel and leave a comment telling me which country you're watching from. Your engagement helps these important stories reach more people who need to hear them. I grew up in Lahore, in a modern Pakistani household. My father was a university professor, my mother a doctor. We prayed 5 times daily, fasted during Ramadan, and lived what anyone would call a normal, educated Muslim life. But there was always something off. Every few years, usually around my birthday, my grandfather, Dada Abu, would have what we called his episodes. He would wake screaming in the middle of the night, speaking in a language none of us recognized. His eyes would roll back, and he would claw at invisible things in the air. The doctors called it trauma-induced psychosis. They prescribed medications that never worked. My grandmother, Dadi Amma, would simply cover all the mirrors in the house, burn wild rue seeds until the smoke made our eyes water, and recite Ayat al-Kursi for hours. She never explained why. She would just say, "Some debts echo across time, Beta. Some promises don't die with the person who made them." I thought she was superstitious, old-fashioned, trapped in village mentality despite decades of city living. I was so terribly wrong. The truth began to unravel 3 months ago, on the night of my grandfather's death. He was 91 years old, his body finally surrendering to time, but his mind became crystal clear in those final hours, as if whatever had clouded it for decades had finally lifted. "Zara," he whispered, his skeletal hand gripping mine with surprising strength, "you need to know. You need to understand, before it's too late. Dada Abu, save your strength. Listen to me." His voice cracked with urgency. "When I was 8 years old, my mother sold me. Not to humans, to them, the invisible ones. And the contract says that every third generation they come to collect." His eyes locked onto mine with terrifying clarity. "You are the third generation, Zara. You are the firstborn daughter, and they are coming for you." He died 10 minutes later, leaving me with questions that would consume every moment of my life from that night forward. My grandmother refused to speak at the funeral. She sat in the corner of our living room, her lips moving in constant prayer, her fingers working through her tasbih beads with mechanical precision. Her eyes were hollow, as if she had been waiting for this moment her entire life, and now that it had arrived, she had nothing left. It was my Aunt Nasreen, my father's younger sister, who finally broke the family's silence. "Your Dada Abu came from a village called Chakwal, in the Salt Range Mountains," she told me 3 days after the burial. We sat in her kitchen, the smell of cardamom chai filling the space between her words. It was 1954, Pakistan was barely 7 years old, the country was still bleeding from partition, and the villages were dying. She paused, her hands trembling slightly as she poured the tea. There was a drought that year. The crops failed completely. Animals died in the fields. Children's bellies swelled with hunger. Your great-grandmother, Allah have mercy on her soul, had 6 children. Your grandfather was the youngest boy, 8 years old, small for his age, always sick. What does this have to do with everything? Aunt Nasreen interrupted. Because when people are desperate enough, when they're watching their children die slowly, they turn to things they shouldn't. They make bargains they can't understand. They open doors that should remain closed. She pulled a small wooden box from beneath her kitchen counter, old, carved with Arabic script and symbols I didn't recognize. Inside was a piece of parchment, yellowed with age but somehow preserved perfectly, as if time itself refused to touch it. Your Dada Abu gave me this 2 years ago. He made me promise not to show anyone until after his death. He said when the time came, you would need to see it. I unfolded the parchment with shaking hands. The writing was in Urdu, Persian, and something else. Symbols that hurt to look at directly, that seemed to shift and writhe on the page. But I could read enough to understand the essential terms: contract of spiritual marriage between the Jinn Prince Azrak of the Blue Flame and the bloodline of Fatima bint Hassan, witnessed by the Peer of the Seven Wells. The contract detailed everything. My great-grandmother, desperate and starving, had brought her youngest son to a spiritual auction held by a local peer, a holy man who was rumored to communicate with the jinn. These auctions were whispered about in those days, held in secret, where the invisible world and the human world conducted their darkest transactions. Families would offer their children, usually the weak, the sickly, the ones expected to die anyway, in exchange for wealth, health, protection from enemies. The jinn would bid and the peer would facilitate the exchange. My grandfather had been sold for 300 rupees, 5 bags of wheat, and a promise that the family would survive the drought. They did survive, every single one of them. While neighboring families buried their children, my great-grandmother's family thrived mysteriously. Food appeared. The well never ran dry. Sickness passed over their home. But the contract had conditions. The boy would live a normal human life, marry a human woman, have human children. But every third generation, the firstborn daughter of his bloodline would be claimed as a bride for the Jinn prince who had purchased him. My father was the second generation. He had no daughters, only sons, so the curse skipped him. But I was the third generation, the firstborn daughter, and according to the contract, on the night of my 24th birthday, I would be taken to complete the bargain my great-grandmother had made 70 years ago. The dreams started that very night. I was standing in a place that existed between worlds, not quite Earth, not quite anywhere else. The sky was the deep blue of twilight that never ends, stars visible but somehow wrong, arranged in patterns that hurt to comprehend. And there was a figure watching me from across a courtyard made of white stone that glowed with its own light. He was beautiful in a way that terrified me. Tall, with features that were almost human but not quite. Too perfect, too symmetrical, as if someone had studied humanity and recreated it without understanding the small imperfections that make us real. His eyes were the blue of the hottest part of a flame, and when he looked at me I felt naked, exposed as if every secret I'd ever kept was written across my skin for him to read. "Zara," he said, and his voice was like water flowing over glass. "Finally, you know." "Who are you?" My voice came out as a whisper. "I think you already know who I am." He stepped closer, and I noticed that he didn't quite walk. He moved like smoke, like the shimmer of heat rising from sun-baked earth. "I am Azrak, and you are mine." "I'm not anyone's." "Your great-grandmother thought differently." There was no cruelty in his voice, only statement of fact. "She came to the auction willingly. She offered her son freely. She signed the contract in her own blood. I have kept my end of the bargain for 7 decades. I have waited patiently as agreed. Now it is time for your bloodline to honor its debt." "That's insane. You can't hold me responsible for something my great-grandmother did." "Can't I?" He tilted his head, studying me with those impossible blue eyes. "Tell me, Zara, do you benefit from the life that bargain purchased? Did you grow up in comfort because your grandfather survived? Did you eat food bought with money earned by a man who should have died at 8 years old? Did you inherit the life that my patience allowed to exist?" I wanted to argue, but the logic was inescapable. Everything I had, everything I was, existed because my grandfather had survived that drought, because this jinn had kept him alive. "What do you want from me?" I whispered. "What was promised? You will be my bride. You will cross into my world. You will live between the seen and unseen, as is your birthright now. And if I refuse?" For the first time, something like sadness crossed his inhuman features. "Then the contract will be fulfilled by force rather than consent. And trust me, Zara, you do not want that. When spiritual debts are collected against the will of the debtor, the cost becomes exponentially higher. It will not just be you who pays. It will be everyone you love." I woke up gasping, my sheets soaked with sweat despite the air conditioning. My phone said it was 3:47 a.m., the hour when the veil between worlds is thinnest, and on my pillow, where there had been nothing when I went to sleep, was a single blue flower. It was like no flower I'd ever seen, petals that seemed to contain their own light, giving off a faint luminescence in the darkness of my room. It was real. He was real. This was happening. Over the next 2 weeks, my life became a catalogue of impossible occurrences. I would find blue flowers everywhere, in my textbooks at university, in my car, tucked into the pockets of jackets I hadn't worn in months. They never wilted, never died, just accumulated like a countdown. Mirrors became dangerous. Every time I looked into one, I would see him standing behind me, Azrak, watching with those flame-blue eyes. My reflection would move a half-second out of sync with my actual movements, as if I was watching myself from outside my own body. Water began to behave strangely around me. Faucets would turn on by themselves. Rain would fall only on me, leaving everyone else around me dry. Once I was swimming at a friend's pool party, and the water literally parted around me, creating a perfect circle of dry space. Everyone saw it. Nobody could explain it. My friends started avoiding me. They wouldn't say why, but I would catch them looking at me with expressions of fear and confusion. Later, one brave friend told me the truth. "Zara, when we're around you, we hear whispers, in a language that isn't human, and sometimes we see something standing behind you, something tall and blue and wrong." My parents were frantic. My father wanted to take me to doctors, psychiatrists, neurologists, anyone with a medical degree. My mother wanted to take me to the imam at our local mosque, but my grandmother, Dadi Amma, she knew the truth. "You've seen him, haven't you?" she asked me one afternoon when we were alone. "Azrak, the Blue Prince. How do you know his name?" "Because I've seen him too. For 50 years, every time I looked at your grandfather, I saw him standing in your Dada Abu's shadow, like a reminder, like a promise waiting to be kept." Tears ran down her weathered face. "I tried to break the contract, Zara. When your father was born, I went to every Maulana, every spiritual healer, every pious person I could find. I performed every ritual, said every prayer, made every sacrifice. What happened? They all told me the same thing. Contracts made in blood, witnessed by jinn, sealed in desperation. These cannot be broken by human hands alone. They can only be renegotiated or fulfilled. And Azrak, he's not a cruel jinn, Beta. He's not a shaitan. He's a prince of the water jinn, a being of nobility in his world. He's been patient, he's been fair, he's kept every promise. So I just have to accept this? Become the bride of a jinn? Leave my family, my life, everything?" Dadi Amma gripped my hands. "No, you have to do what your grandfather could never do. You have to meet him as an equal. You have to understand the contract, every word, every clause. Because contracts made in desperation contain loopholes. They always do. Your great-grandmother was illiterate, terrified, half-mad with grief. She didn't read the fine print. But you're educated. You're strong. You can find a way. How?" She pulled out an old address, written on paper so old it crumbled at the edges. "There's a woman. She lives in the old city, in Bhatigate. She's a descendant of the peer who facilitated the original auction. Her name is Amina Shah. If anyone knows how to negotiate with jinn, it's her." That night, I made my decision. I wouldn't run from this. I wouldn't let fear consume me. I would go to Amina Shah. I would understand the contract, and I would find a way to either break it or change its terms, because I refuse to be a currency in someone else's desperate bargain. The old city of Lahore is a labyrinth of narrow streets, crumbling Haveli mansions, and secrets whispered through generations. Patti Gate, one of the 13 original gates of the walled city, stands like a guardian of forgotten histories. I found Amina Shah's house tucked between a spice merchant and a mosque that had stood for 400 years. The wooden door was carved with the same symbols I had seen on the contract: protection sigils, prayers in Arabic, and geometric patterns that seemed to shift when I looked at them too directly. An elderly woman answered. She was perhaps 70, with silver hair covered by a white dupatta, and eyes that were milky with cataracts. Yet somehow, I felt she could see me more clearly than anyone with perfect vision ever had. "You're late," she said without introduction. "I've been expecting you for 3 weeks. How did you—" "Child, when a spiritual contract reaches its fulfillment date, those of us who work in the between spaces can feel it. The air itself becomes charged. You are the girl from the Chakwal auction, yes? 3rd generation?" I nodded, speechless. "Come inside. We have much to discuss and little time to do it." Her home was extraordinary. Every wall was covered with papers, contracts, agreements, declarations, all written in multiple languages. Some were centuries old, preserved by what I suspected was more than just careful storage. "This is my family's legacy," Amina explained, gesturing to the walls. For 9 generations we have been intermediaries between the human world and the jinn realm. We facilitate, we witness, we keep records, but we do not judge. We cannot judge, because who are we to say what choice is right when someone is watching their child die of hunger? She pulled out a leather-bound ledger and flipped through pages until she found what she was looking for. Here, your great-grandmother's auction. I have my great-grandfather's notes. The entry was detailed and devastating. Fatima bint Hassan, age 34, 6 children, husband killed in partition violence, drought year, came to auction desperate, weeping, offered youngest son, age 8, sickly constitution, not expected to survive. Prince Azrak bid highest. Unusual. He is royalty among water jinn, rarely participates in auctions. When asked why he wanted the boy, he said, "His bloodline has something I need, something that will only manifest in the 3rd generation. I am patient. I can wait." Contract signed, witnessed, sealed. Payment delivered immediately. Family survived drought. Boy thrived, lived to old age. Contract completion, 3rd generation, firstborn daughter, 24th birthday. Something I need? I repeated. What could I possibly have that a jinn prince needs? Amina's clouded eyes fixed on me with uncomfortable intensity. That is what you must discover. Because here's what my ancestors learned over centuries of facilitating these exchanges. Jinn do not waste time. They do not make long-term investments without reason. If Azrak waited 70 years for you specifically, it's because you possess something he cannot obtain any other way. What could that be? That's what you'll ask him. Because the contract has a clause, one that was standard in all agreements my great-grandfather facilitated. Before the fulfillment date, the contracted party has the right to one formal negotiation, face-to-face, in neutral territory, with a witness present. Hope flared in my chest. Can you be the witness? I am bound by tradition to offer this service, yes. But Zara, her expression became grave. Negotiation doesn't mean escape. It means understanding. You may learn things about yourself, about your bloodline, about why this happened. But in the end, jinn contracts are binding. The only way out is through. The question is through as a victim or through as an equal. She handed me a small velvet pouch. Inside was a talisman, a smooth stone engraved with prayers and sealed with wax. Hold this when you sleep tonight. Tell Azrak you invoke your right to formal negotiation. He will have to honor it. It's in the contract. When will this happen? Tomorrow night, midnight, at the shrine of Shah Jamal. It's one of the thin places where both worlds can meet on equal ground. I'll be there. So will he. And Zara? She gripped my hand with surprising strength. Do not go there with anger or fear. Go with curiosity. Ask the right questions. Because sometimes what looks like a curse is actually a key. I left her house more confused than when I'd arrived, but I also left with something I hadn't had before. A plan, a chance, a way to face this on my own terms. That night I held the talisman as I fell asleep and whispered into the darkness. Azrak, I invoke my right to formal negotiation. Tomorrow night, midnight, Shah Jamal Shrine. Be there. The air in my room shimmered, and I heard his voice, clear as if he stood beside me. I will be there. And Zara, thank you. Thank you for not running. That makes this so much easier. His gratitude terrified me more than any threat could have. The shrine of Shah Jamal sits in the heart of Lahore, a place where Sufi tradition and mysticism have intertwined for centuries. Every Thursday night, devotees gather there for the Dhamal, ecstatic dancing that blurs the line between worship and trance, between this world and the next. But tonight wasn't Thursday. Tonight, the shrine was empty, except for the 3 of us. Amina Shah arrived first, spreading a white cloth on the ground and placing a Quran at its center, the traditional setup for spiritual arbitration. I arrived 5 minutes later, my heart pounding so hard, I thought it might break through my ribs. And at exactly midnight he appeared, not gradually this time. Azrak simply stepped out of the air itself, as if walking through an invisible door. He was even more striking in person than in dreams. Tall, impossibly beautiful, radiating a cool energy that made the air around him shimmer like heat waves in reverse. Zara, he said, inclining his head respectfully. Witness Amina, thank you both for honoring the old ways. Let's begin, Amina said, her voice taking on a formal quality. This is a negotiation under the sacred laws that govern contracts between jinn and humans. Both parties will speak truth, both parties will listen, and both parties will seek understanding before demanding resolution. She looked at me. Zara, you may begin. What do you wish to know? I took a deep breath. Why me? Specifically me. You waited 70 years. You could have taken my grandfather's children in the second generation. Why wait for the third? What do I have that you need? Azrak sat down across from me, and for the first time I saw something vulnerable in his expression. Because you are a Kawatini Ru, a soul speaker. It manifests only once every 3 to 5 generations in certain bloodlines. Your great-grandmother had it weekly. That's how she could access the auction in the first place, how she could see and bargain with jinn. But you, his eyes blazed brighter, you have it fully developed. I don't understand. What is a soul speaker? A human who can perceive the true names of things, who can see past illusion and form to the essential reality beneath. In your world, this manifests as extraordinary empathy, as the ability to read people deeply, as dreams that show truth. You've had these experiences your whole life, haven't you? You know things about people without being told. You can sense when someone is lying. You dream of events before they happen. I wanted to deny it, but I couldn't. He was right. All my life I'd known things I shouldn't know. I'd chalked it up to intuition, to being perceptive, but it was more than that. What does this have to do with you? I asked. I am cursed, he said simply. 73 years ago I was cursed by a rival prince from the fire court. The curse bound my true name, the name that contains my essence, my power, my very soul, and locked it away. Without my true name I am diminished. I cannot access my full power. I cannot take my rightful place as ruler of the water court. I am trapped in a half-existence, neither fully alive nor fully powerless. And you think I can break this curse? I don't think. I know. A soul speaker can perceive true names. With your help you can see what has been hidden from me for 7 decades. You can speak my name back to me. You can break my curse. The pieces fell into place. That's why you bid on my grandfather. Not because you wanted him, but because you were investing in his bloodline. You were waiting for a soul speaker to be born. Yes. And the price is that I have to become your bride? He looked away, and I saw something like shame flicker across his features. The marriage contract was insurance, a guarantee that you would help me when the time came, that you would be bound to me legally, spiritually, in ways that couldn't be broken. I was desperate, Zara. I have been slowly fading for 70 years. In another decade, I will cease to exist entirely. When you're facing oblivion, you make bargains you're not proud of. Amina spoke for the first time since the negotiation began. This changes the nature of the contract. The original agreement was based on incomplete information. The human party, Fatima bint Hassan, believed she was trading her son for material wealth. She was not informed that this was actually a long-term strategy to procure a soul speaker. That's correct, Azrak admitted. Then the contract is voidable under Article 7 of traditional jinn human law. Deception, even by omission, invalidates consent. For the first time I saw fear in Azrak's eyes. Witness, please. However, Amina continued, looking at me, voiding the contract doesn't void the debt. Your family did receive the promised benefits. They survived. They prospered. That prosperity gave you life, education, opportunity. The question is not whether a debt exists, but what form its repayment should take. She turned to Azrak. If Zara helps you recover your true name and breaks your curse, would that satisfy the debt? Would the marriage contract become unnecessary? He was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. Yes, if she helps me freely without coercion, the debt would be paid. The marriage contract could be dissolved. She would be free. I looked at this jinn prince, this being of legend and power, and saw him truly for the first time, not as a monster, not as a curse, but as a person, a desperate person who had gambled everything on a chance to survive. Why didn't you just tell me this from the beginning? I asked. Why the dreams, the flowers, the intimidation? Because I was afraid, he said simply. Afraid that if you knew you had a choice, you would choose to walk away, that you would let me fade into nothingness rather than help someone who manipulated your family, and I wouldn't have blamed you. But I didn't want to die, Zara. I've lived for 800 years. I've seen empires rise and fall. I've loved and lost and learned, and I'm not ready for it to end. His honesty broke something open in me. This wasn't about good versus evil. This was about survival, about desperation, about the same kind of fear my great-grandmother had felt when she brought her dying son to that auction. If I help you, I said slowly, and we break your curse, the marriage contract is void. I go back to my life? No strings attached? No strings attached, he confirmed. You would have your freedom, and I would have my name. Both of us would have what we need. I looked at Amina. Is this binding? Can he be held to this agreement? She nodded. If he speaks it in my presence with the Quran as witness, it becomes an unbreakable oath, more powerful than the original contract. I took a deep breath. This was my choice, my decision, not something imposed on me by ancestors I'd never met or debts I didn't accrue. Then I'll do it, I said. Not because I'm forced to, but because it's right. Because you're a person and you deserve to live. Because this is how we break cycles, not by running from them, but by transforming them into something new. Azraq's eyes blazed with emotion so intense I had to look away. Thank you, he whispered. Zara, thank you. But, I continued, we do this my way, transparently. No more manipulations, no more fear tactics. We work together as equals, or we don't work at all. Agreed, completely agreed. Amina smiled for the first time that evening. Then we have a new contract, spoken, witnessed and sealed. Tomorrow night we begin the work of recovering Azraq's true name, and when it's done, both of you will be free. I walked home under the stars, feeling lighter than I had in months. The curse hadn't disappeared. The work still lay ahead, but for the first time since my grandfather's deathbed confession, I felt like I had agency, like I had power. The story wasn't over, but maybe, just maybe, I could write a better ending than anyone expected. The work began the next evening in Amina's home, in a room I hadn't seen before, a circular chamber with no windows, walls covered entirely in mirrors that reflected each other into infinity. Soul speaking requires you to see beyond the physical, Amina explained. These mirrors will help you perceive the layered realities that exist simultaneously. What is hidden, what is true, what is named. Azraq sat in the center of the room, and I could see immediately that something was wrong. His form flickered, unstable, like a television signal going in and out. Parts of him would blur and fade, then snap back into focus. The curse is accelerating, he said, his voice strained. Once the fulfillment date approaches, it begins to consume what little remains. We have perhaps a week before I fade entirely. What do I need to do? I asked, sitting across from him. Look at me, not with your eyes, with whatever part of you perceives truth. The name is there, hidden within me, locked behind the curse. You have to see through the illusion to find it. I closed my eyes and then opened them in a different way. It's hard to explain, like opening a set of inner eyes that had always been there, but I'd never known how to use. What I saw took my breath away. Azraq wasn't just one being. He was layers upon layers of existence stacked on top of each other. I saw him as a young jinn, full of fire and ambition. I saw him as a prince, leading armies of water spirits. I saw him falling in love with a jinn woman who died, leaving him broken. I saw him being cursed, saw the rival prince speaking words that wrapped around Azraq's essence like chains. And deep within, buried beneath centuries of pain and loss, I saw something glowing, a word, a sound, a truth that wanted to be spoken, but I couldn't reach it. Every time I got close, the curse would react. Black tendrils would lash out, and I would be thrown back into normal vision, gasping and disoriented. It's protected, I said after the 5th attempt. The curse won't just let me see the name, it's actively defending against soul speakers. That's what I feared, Azraq said. My rival was thorough. He knew someday I might find a soul speaker, so he made sure the curse would fight back. Amina leaned forward. There's a way, but it will cost you, Zara. It will require you to link your soul to his temporarily, to share the burden of the curse. You'll experience everything he's experienced, the pain, the loss, the centuries of fading. It could damage you. It could mark you permanently. Once you see someone's true name, once you speak it, you're bound to them in ways that transcend any contract. Bound how? You'll be able to sense each other, call to each other across distances. In some traditions, it's considered a deeper marriage than any physical union, a marriage of souls, not bodies. Even after you speak his name and the contract is dissolved, that connection will remain, forever. I looked at Azraq. Is this true? He nodded slowly. I didn't know the curse was this protected. I didn't realize what I would be asking of you. Amina is right. If you do this, we'll be connected for the rest of your life. You'll carry a piece of me, and I'll carry a piece of you. It's intimate in ways humans rarely experience. It's not sexual, it's not romantic, but it's profound, permanent. So my choice is, let you die, or bind myself to you forever in a way that's deeper than the marriage contract we're trying to escape. Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't know. If there were any other way, there isn't, Amina said quietly. This is the test, Zara. This is where you decide who you are. You can walk away. The debt is negotiable, the contract voidable. No one would blame you. Or you can choose compassion over self-protection. You can choose connection over isolation, but you cannot choose both. I sat in silence, my mind racing. This wasn't what I'd agreed to. This was so much bigger, so much more complicated. But then I thought about my great-grandmother, desperate and terrified, making a bargain she didn't understand to save her children. I thought about my grandfather, carrying this secret his entire life, dying with the weight of it. Cycles don't break with easy choices. They break when someone finally chooses differently. Teach me how to link, I said. Let's do this. Azrak looked at me with an expression I couldn't name. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. That's what courage is, isn't it? Not the absence of fear, but action despite it. He reached out his hand. It was cool to the touch, like water from a deep well. Then let's break the curse that has haunted both our bloodlines. Together. The linking process was unlike anything I could have imagined. Amina guided us through it, her voice steady and calm, speaking in Arabic and Urdu and languages I didn't recognize. She drew symbols on my forehead with saffron water, recited Quranic verses of protection, and placed my hand over Azrak's heart, the place where jinn keep their essence. When I finish the incantation, she said, you will fall into his history. You will experience 70 years of his life in a matter of minutes. Do not resist, do not pull back. Let yourself drown in him, only then will you reach the name. Will it hurt? Yes, but the pain will be temporary. The truth will be permanent. Ready? I nodded, unable to speak. Amina began to chant. The world dissolved. I fell through Azrak's memories like falling through water, each one crashing over me with visceral intensity. A young jinn prince, arrogant and powerful, barely 200 years old, challenging a rival at court. The rival, Qayyim, Prince of the Fire Court, red-eyed and vengeful, speaking words in the old tongue that wrapped around Azrak's essence like molten chains. The curse taking hold, his true name being ripped from his consciousness and locked away, hidden even from himself. The agony of it, like having your identity surgically removed while you're still awake. Decades of searching for a solution, consulting with ancient jinn scholars, with human mystics, with beings from the edges of reality, all of them saying the same thing. Only a soul speaker can perceive what has been hidden by the old tongue. The growing desperation as his power began to fade, watching his court lose faith in him, watching younger princes circle like sharks, waiting for him to weaken enough to overthrow. The decision to attend a human auction, the shame of it, a prince of the water court, reduced to bargaining with desperate humans. But then seeing the boy, my grandfather, and sensing the latent gift in his bloodline, the flicker of hope, the terrible choice to make a 70-year investment in a family that didn't even know they possessed what he needed. Watching from the shadows as my grandfather grew up, married, had children, the guilt of it, the knowledge that he was manipulating lives, creating debts, forcing choices. But the alternative was oblivion, and finally, me, seeing me be born, recognizing immediately that the gift had fully manifested, feeling relief and shame in equal measure, waiting, always waiting, counting down the years, the months, the days, until he could finally ask for what he needed to survive. The memories slammed into me with physical force. I felt his loneliness, 800 years of existence, most of it spent watching everyone he loved age and die or drift away. I felt his fear, the slow erasure of self that came with losing your true name, like forgetting your own face one feature at a time. I felt his shame, at the manipulation, at the desperation, at the things he'd done to survive. But I also felt his nobility, the centuries he'd spent protecting the water sources of the Punjab, keeping wells pure, guiding rain to drought-stricken areas, the human children he'd saved from drowning, always invisible, never asking for recognition, the jinn young he'd mentored, teaching them to coexist peacefully with humans rather than exploit them. He wasn't a villain, he wasn't a hero, he was simply a person who had lived too long and was terrified of ending. And deeper, beneath all the memories, I finally saw it. His true name. It wasn't written in any language I knew. It was pure meaning, a vibration, a resonance, a fundamental truth about who Azrak was at his core. The name contained his essence, water in all its forms, patience and persistence, the deep currents that move beneath still surfaces, the power to nurture and to drown, to give life and to take it away. But the curse had wrapped itself around this name like a parasite, feeding on it, slowly consuming it. Black tendrils pulsed and writhed, draining the light from the name, dimming it year by year. I reached for it with my consciousness, and the curse struck back. Pain exploded through my body. It felt like my soul was being ripped apart, like every cell in my being was screaming. I heard Amina shouting something, felt hands gripping my shoulders, but I couldn't pull back. I was locked in, drowning in Azraq's memories, caught between the curse and the name. "Let go," Azraq's voice echoed in my mind. "Zara, let go, you're being hurt." "No," I thought back, gripping tighter. "I'm not losing you. Not after seeing everything. Not after knowing you." I pushed deeper, ignoring the pain, ignoring the curse's attempts to tear me away, and I began to speak, not with my voice, with something deeper, with the part of me that could perceive truth and give it form. I spoke Azraq's true name. It came out as sound that wasn't quite sound, a resonance that shook the mirrors in the room, that made the air itself vibrate. Each syllable was an act of creation, calling back what had been hidden, restoring what had been locked away. The curse fought. It lashed at me with everything it had. I felt my nose begin to bleed, felt something tear inside me, a price being paid for speaking what shouldn't be spoken, but I kept going, syllable by syllable, sound by sound, truth by truth, and finally, with the last breath I had, I spoke the complete name. The curse shattered. I saw it break apart like glass, the black tendrils disintegrating into nothing. Light exploded from Azraq's core, blue and white and brilliant, filling the room, filling the world, and I fell. I collapsed backward, blood streaming from my nose and ears, my body convulsing. Amina caught me, lowering me gently to the floor, her hands glowing with healing light as she began reciting verses from Surah Ash-Shifa. Azraq knelt beside me, and he was transformed. The flickering was gone. The weakness was gone. He was solid, powerful, radiant with restored essence. His eyes blazed like blue suns, but he was weeping. "Zara," he whispered, "what did you do? You could have died. You should have let go." "Couldn't," I managed to say through bloody lips. "Wouldn't. You deserved to have your name back. Everyone deserves to be whole." He placed his hand over my heart, and I felt cool energy flowing into me, healing, soothing, repairing the damage the curse had done in its final moments. "You saved me," he said, "not because you had to, not because of any contract, but because you chose compassion over safety. You chose connection over isolation." "The contract," I whispered. "It's dissolved now, right? I'm free." "Yes," Amina said softly. "The moment you spoke his name freely without coercion, the debt was paid in full. You are bound by no contract, no obligation. But," Azraq added quietly, "we are bound by something deeper now. The soul link. You'll carry a piece of me forever. I'll carry a piece of you. We'll be able to sense each other, call to each other across any distance. Is that acceptable to you?" I looked at him, really looked at him, at this ancient being who had been so desperate to survive that he'd manipulated my entire bloodline, who had been so ashamed of his desperation that he'd hidden behind contracts and fear, who had, in the end, tried to release me from the very thing he needed to survive. "It's acceptable," I said. "Actually, it's more than that. It's right. We broke a cycle today, Azraq. Not by running from it, but by transforming it. The curse your family placed on you, broken. The contract my family signed in desperation, fulfilled and dissolved. The link between us now isn't about debt or obligation. It's about choice, and I choose this." His tears fell on my face like cool rain. "Thank you. Thank you for seeing me, for speaking my name, for giving me back myself. Thank you for teaching me that compassion doesn't mean weakness. That connection doesn't mean imprisonment, and that sometimes the scariest thing we face is actually just someone else's fear wearing a different mask." Amina helped me sit up, her healing energy continuing to flow through my body. "You'll need rest. Speaking a jinn's true name takes a toll on human bodies, but you'll recover. And Zara," she smiled with genuine pride, "what you did tonight will be recorded in our archives. You didn't just break a curse, you showed a better way forward. One where humans and jinn meet as equals, not as exploiters and exploited." "What happens now?" I asked. Azraq stood, and I could feel his restored power radiating from him like heat from a star. "Now I return to the water court. I reclaim my throne. I undo 70 years of decline and mismanagement, and I remember, always, that I owe my existence to a human woman who chose mercy over vengeance." "Will I see you again?" he smiled. Zara, you'll sense me every time you're near water. You'll hear my voice in rain. You'll feel my presence in rivers and wells. And when you need me, if you ever need me, you only have to call. The soul link works both ways. I am yours as much as you are mine now. Not as property, but as family. The word hung in the air, transforming everything. Family. Not through blood or marriage or contracts written in desperation, but through choice, through seeing each other truly and choosing connection anyway. I spent 3 days recovering in Amina's home. The physical toll of speaking Azraq's true name had been severe. I'd hemorrhaged internally, damaged my vocal cords, and burned through so much energy that I could barely move. But Amina was an expert healer. She used combinations of traditional medicine and spiritual practice, reciting Quranic verses while applying poultices, burning herbs while setting broken blood vessels, right through sheer force of will and faith. Your body will remember this, she told me on the second day. You'll be more sensitive to spiritual presences now. You'll see and hear things most humans cannot. The veil between worlds will always be thinner for you. Is that a curse? That depends on how you use it. It can be a burden, seeing too much, knowing too much, or it can be a gift, understanding the true nature of reality, navigating both worlds with wisdom. On the 4th day, I was strong enough to go home. My parents were frantic. I'd been missing for nearly a week and no explanation I could give would satisfy them without revealing everything. So I told them the truth. I told them about the contract, about Azraq, about speaking his true name and breaking the curse, about the soul link that would connect us forever. My father, rational academic that he was, wanted to have me committed. My mother, more spiritually minded, simply wept. But my grandmother, Dadi Amma, she understood. Your Dada Abu would be so proud, she said, holding my hands. He carried the weight of that contract his entire life. The guilt of knowing his survival had cost his descendants their freedom. He died believing you would be taken against your will, but you transformed it. You made it into something beautiful. I'm still connected to a jinn, Daddy, forever. Is that beautiful? Beta, we're all connected to things we don't fully understand, to ancestors we never met, to choices made in desperation, to debts and gifts passed down through generations. The question isn't whether we're connected, it's whether those connections enslave us or teach us how to be more fully human. Her wisdom settled something in me. Over the following weeks, life slowly returned to normal, or at least a new version of normal. I went back to university, but I was different. I could sense things about people now, their fears, their hidden griefs, their unspoken truths. At first it was overwhelming, but gradually I learned to control it, to turn the sensitivity on and off like adjusting the volume on a radio. And I could feel Azraq, always, a cool presence in the back of my consciousness, like a stream running beneath everything. Sometimes I would catch glimpses of his world, vast underwater palaces, courts filled with jinn nobility, political maneuverings that made human politics look simple. One evening, about a month after the curse breaking, I was walking home from the university library when rain began to fall, but only on me. Everyone else remained dry as the water fell in a perfect circle around my body. I heard his voice, carried on the rain. Thank you. Again. Always. You're welcome, I said out loud, not caring that people were staring. Are you okay? How's the water court? Complicated. Centuries of damage to undo. But I'm doing it. And Zara, I've been thinking. You broke a curse that had lasted 70 years. You spoke a name that had been hidden by the old tongue. That kind of power. There are others who could use your help. What do you mean? Other contracts, other debts, other desperate bargains made between humans and jinn that have gone wrong. What if you could help negotiate them, transform them the way you transformed ours? Amina could teach you. I could protect you. You could become a bridge between our worlds, but one who works for justice, not exploitation. I stood in the rain, considering a purpose, a calling, a way to use what I'd learned, what I'd become. Let me think about it, I said. Take all the time you need. I'll be here, always. The rain stopped and I continued home, my mind spinning with possibilities. 6 months have passed since I spoke Azraq's true name. My life has become something I never could have imagined. I finished my semester at university, but I also began apprenticing with Amina Shah. 3 evenings a week, I sit in her mirror-walled room and learn the intricate laws that govern jinn-human contracts. I study the old tongue. I practice perceiving true names without burning myself out. I've helped negotiate 4 contracts so far, a young man in Islamabad whose grandmother had promised him to a jinn in exchange for healing her cancer. We renegotiated so that he would serve as the jinn's liaison to the human world, helping the jinn understand modern Pakistan rather than as a husband. A family in Peshawar whose ancestor had made a deal for protection during the Soviet-Afghan War. The protection contract had become a protection prison. The jinn guard had become possessive, controlling, suffocating. We restructured it so the family could decline the protection now that the war was long over, and the jinn could retire with honor. A woman in Karachi who was being haunted by a jinn she'd accidentally offended by demolishing a tree on her property. The jinn had lived in that tree for 200 years. Rather than fighting, we found the jinn a new home, an ancient banyan tree in a protected park, and the woman donated money to the park's preservation in exchange for the jinn blessing her new home. Each case is different. Each requires patience, creativity, and the willingness to see both sides, human and jinn, as people rather than as adversaries. Azrak helps when he can. Sometimes he appears in person, stepping out of fountains or rain puddles or even glasses of water to offer his perspective. Other times he simply whispers advice through our soul link, his ancient wisdom helping me navigate situations I'm too young to fully understand alone. My parents have slowly come to accept my new path. My father still struggles with it. His rational mind rebels against the existence of jinn, even though he's seen the evidence with his own eyes. But my mother has become one of my strongest supporters. She tells her friends that her daughter is doing spiritual social work, which isn't entirely inaccurate. And my grandmother, Dadi Amma, she's the most proud of all. Your Dada Abu tried his whole life to break free of the contract, she told me last week. But maybe that was never the point. Maybe the point was for someone in our family to transform what the contract meant, to turn a curse into a calling. You did that, Beta. You turned debt into service, fear into connection. I visit his grave sometimes at the cemetery in the old city. I tell him stories about the contracts I've negotiated, the jinn I've met, the world between worlds that I navigate now, and sometimes, I swear, I feel him listening, proud, relieved, finally at peace. The soul link with Azrak has become as natural as breathing. We don't talk every day, but I always know he's there. When I'm sad, I feel cool water energy wrapping around me like a comforting embrace. When I'm scared, I hear his voice reminding me that I spoke a name locked by the old tongue. I can handle anything. And when he's struggling with the complexities of ruling a court that nearly fell apart during his curse, I offer him the perspective of someone who's young, who's human, who sees things differently than 800-year-old jinn nobility. We've become partners, friends, family, in the deepest, truest sense of the word. Last month, Azrak invited me to the water court, not as a bride, not as payment for a debt, but as an honored guest. I stood in a palace made of flowing water and crystal, surrounded by jinn of impossible beauty, and I wasn't afraid, because I understood something fundamental. The invisible world and the human world aren't separate. They're intertwined, interconnected, constantly touching and influencing each other. The question isn't whether we interact with the unseen. We do. Every day. Every choice we make sends ripples into realms we can't perceive. The question is whether we interact with wisdom and compassion or with ignorance and fear. So what is the lesson of my story? What should you take away from the tale of a girl who was almost sold into a spirit marriage and instead transformed a curse into a calling? First, understand this. Desperation makes us do terrible things. My great-grandmother wasn't evil. She was a mother watching her children starve. Azrak wasn't a villain. He was a being facing oblivion. When we're desperate enough, we all make bargains we're not proud of. The question isn't whether we'll face desperation, it's how we'll respond when we do. Second, remember that contracts written in fear will always come due. You cannot escape generational trauma, karmic debt, or spiritual obligations by ignoring them. You can only transform them by facing them directly, with courage and compassion. Third, know that connection isn't imprisonment. For so long, I thought being linked to Azrak would mean losing my freedom. But the opposite happened. The soul link didn't trap me, it expanded me. It gave me access to wisdom, protection, and purpose I never would have found alone. Real connection doesn't diminish us, it makes us more fully ourselves. Fourth, understand that every being, human or jinn, seen or unseen, deserves to be treated with dignity. Azrak manipulated my family for 70 years, but when I saw his true name, when I understood his desperation, I couldn't hate him. I could only see a person who wanted to survive. and that changed everything. Finally, and most importantly, spirituality should never be used as currency. Don't make bargains with the unseen world in moments of panic. Don't promise what you don't understand. Don't offer your descendants freedom for your immediate comfort, because those debts will come due and the price will be higher than you imagine. But if you find yourself trapped in a spiritual contract, whether literal or metaphorical, remember that transformation is always possible. Curses can be broken, cycles can be interrupted, debts can be repaid through service rather than suffering. You just have to be willing to see the truth, speak the name, and choose compassion over fear. Before I leave you, I want you to do something. Think about your own life. What generational patterns are you carrying? What debts, spiritual, emotional, financial, have been passed down to you? What contracts did your ancestors sign that you're still paying for? You can't escape these inheritances, but you can transform them. You can be the generation that breaks the cycle. You can turn curses into callings. Subscribe to this channel if you want to hear more stories like mine. Stories that challenge how you see the world, that reveal the invisible currents moving beneath the surface of reality. Leave a comment telling me, have you ever felt bound by something beyond your control? A family pattern? A spiritual obligation? A debt you didn't incur but still have to pay? Share your story, because sometimes speaking our truth is the first step toward transforming it. My name is Zara. I was almost auctioned into a spirit marriage to pay for a debt my great-grandmother signed in blood 70 years ago. But I transformed that debt into a bridge between worlds. I turned fear into friendship. I took a contract written in desperation and rewrote it as a story of mutual liberation. And if I can do it, so can you. Whatever contracts bind you, whatever curses follow you, whatever debts echo through your bloodline, they can be transformed, not by running, not by denying, but by facing them with clear eyes and a compassionate heart. The unseen world is real, the jinn exist, the contracts matter, but love, courage, and the willingness to see the truth in even our enemies, these are more powerful than any curse ever written. Assalamu alaikum. May peace be upon you all, and may you have the courage to transform your inheritances into your callings.